Hey everyone, I'm Ron De Jesus, Field Chief Privacy Officer at Transcend. The following is a conversation with Max Schrems, founder of Noib, a nonprofit dedicated to launching strategic litigation to protect the privacy of individuals in the EU and beyond. Today, we're going to dive into Max's journey, his motivations behind his relentless pursuit of digital privacy, and what's next in the ongoing battle for data protection. This is Transcend Field Trips. Max, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for the invite.
I think that for any privacy pro, this would be the apex of their career. So thank you so much. But I think that I just want to get a little bit about your backstory. Whether you like it or not, you are thought of as a, David in the David and Goliath in privacy. Like you're definitely out there fighting for the little guy. I wanted to learn a little bit more about the driver for creating Noib, none of your business. What kind of drove you to develop an organization that is, essentially advocating for privacy rights?
I think the David versus Goliath picture is exactly that. It was a bit weird because, I brought these couple of cases, being my little student dorm on my little student laptop.
In Santa Clara, right?
No, just in Austria, generally after Santa Clara. Yeah. But and then you're like, you're the forefront of European privacy, and you're invited to the European Parliament to speak at something. You're like, I'm a fucking student at home. This is ridiculous. Like, how is that the biggest privacy thing we have? And I think that was a bit clear that we needed some kind of professional organization, like a bit like consumer rights organizations, where at some point you feel, the average consumer is not going to be able to do that on its own. And we need to professionalize that somehow. I personally never wanted to do that, really. I was like, someone should probably do that. Please, not me.
DPAs, for example?
Yeah, that's the other question is like, why does Noib even exist? We do have it in consumer rights organizations that we say, there's someone else than just a regulator. But I usually joke is like, we don't have a building code enforcement NGO because building codes are simply enforced by the government, and we don't really see that as an area for nonprofit organizations. And that also speaks a bit on how privacy does not work in large extents because the regulators do not do their job really and try to find ways not to enforce it. And that for the first time actually gives you that space there for NGOs to say, there is some need.
Is that just a resource issue? Why aren't DPAs?
It's a mix. I think the largest problem in the privacy bubble is the culture issue we have. We have a 20-year culture of non-compliance and kind of coming up with weird legal theories why the law really doesn't say what it says. We had stuff where they called us, I think, privacy Taliban or privacy Nazis or all this kind of wonderful things that you get thrown at. And it was like the really radical thing we do at Noib is reading the law and actually applying it. Yeah. And we have actually a very academic approach to what we're doing. We're very much, what does the law say? What is the history of that paragraph? Where does it come from? We usually have much more resources dedicated to that than at a normal law firm. Like we really dig into stuff a lot.
How big is Noib right now?
We're 25 people. And I have to lie, around 10 lawyers. We usually then have about 4 legal trainees. We try to cover almost all of Europe, which with all the language diversity and like procedural law and everything is different per country. So it's quite challenging, but also quite interesting in that area. So that's the reason we're a European organization as well, is by having this European view, you can actually be quite efficient in the sense that an appeal in Ireland costs 100,000 euros. An appeal in Austria costs 35 euros. So if you run on donations, there is opportunities to really kind of go where it's more efficient and where you get stuff done.
And you're purely donation run.
We're largely donation run. So we basically, anybody can become a Noib member and become a supporting member and choose from €1 to infinity. Obviously infinity preferred, but not oftentimes happening. And that's the core of our budget. We do have some foundations that put money in, but also, for example, in Austria, the city of Vienna is a member and actually pays into it. Or in Austria, there is what we call the workers' chamber. So every worker has to be a member of that by law. And they also are members of us and chip in. So we're on 1,000 little legs, and that also makes us very independent. So it's compared to other organizations, we can actually do what we believe in and not only have to do stuff that, for example, the public is working well, which in the NGO sector, if you're really only on donations, you have to see, where do you bring people in? And we're very happy that we actually have this opportunity to say this is really a structurally big problem in the privacy bubble. But no one in the general public understands it or knows why this is a problem, or it's hard to communicate, and we can still do it without being like, oh, it's not going to get us donation.
Yeah.
So, and that's quite an interesting setup that we have. I think that I'm not oftentimes proud of things. I'm a bit proud of that, maybe, to be set up to have a bit of a no bullshit organization and approach.
So with GDPR, obviously, but now we have the EU AI Act. I know you have some thoughts on that, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But do you see Noib just growing year over year to help with enforcement of these new regs that are coming down the pipe?
So we don't really do much on these new regulations because we're more starting from what is a problem. Like, what does the average consumer or average user have as a problem? A lot of the AI simply hasn't hit the consumer market in the relevant way. Like, okay, there's a chatbot, but like, what is the privacy
That's what
problem?
90% of companies are doing, just LLM based.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So some of that we really hasn't hit the level where we say, is it a structural problem? And we really, I mean, I push back a lot internally, but also in the broader public, to not just jump on the next hype or so. We really try to be like, how many people are impacted? How much of an issue is it? Is it going to go away by itself for some reason? Which, like, to be honest, with half of the apps that are discussed that we should, deal with, and we're like, guys, they're gonna die in a half a year anyways. I mean, it's like they were like, you should really do something about Google Glasses, and I was like, no one in the world is gonna wear this shit anyways.
Nobody has Google Glasses.
Yeah. So, or I don't know, Clubhouse was a big thing a couple of years ago, where everyone was like, you got to do something about Clubhouse, and no one even knew what the privacy issues around it. It just knew there was something new on the block, and we have to do something about it. So we're actually really trying to see, okay, what is the structural issue? Where do we have problems where people really suffer from, and more have a priority list that way. And AI hasn't hit that too much so far. We're starting to see it a bit. We see it on the training side now. But we're not really an AI organization, so to say. And the AI Act also has very limited private right of action. And as a litigation organization, you also have to think, okay, can I even bring a case here without...
What's the biggest bang for your buck, essentially?
Or what's the biggest impact, so to say, for your buck? And that is a bit where I also, like, internally, I tell people, we have people that donate us 20 euros a year, and they're minimum income. They basically are on government subsidies, but still give us $20 because they think it's so important what we do. And I want to tell that person in the evening that we spent that money well, and that we actually didn't do something that is just very theoretical. And that's a bit the approach. So the other thing that's a bit interesting with us is everybody can choose their own project. So we have 10 lawyers, and every lawyer can be like, I really want to do something about this. And as long as it passes our internal test, people have like their own project. So we also don't have a 5-year plan of we're going to do this next year. It's very quick, very flexible. And oftentimes people ask me like, what are you up to next year? And it was like, or next half a year. I was like,
so
I don't even know what it is in 2 weeks. So we'll see what.
Focusing on AI again, but EU AI Act. And I know, so we're at the IPP PSR in Los Angeles, which you spoke at. There was a game that you played, I think on your keynote, Marry Kill, where you'd essentially, I think you said you'd...
It was Fork, Marry, Kill.
Oh, Fork, sorry. I did the normal game. We're going to bleep that out. But so Fort, is it Fort?
Fork, as in the fork. That's what I understood. Maybe I'm the
okay, well, let's play the funner game.
Okay.
So I think, Mary, you'd say the U.S. national legislation, federal legislation, you would kill the EU AI Act, and you would the GDPR.
I would fork the GDPR. Sorry. In that sense, that I reinterpreted the forking as in providing, like, taking that as a basis and making it like a code a better alternative.
Got it.
So that was at least
that is the wrong game. But do you have issue with the EU AI Act at all?
Not at all. Like, to be honest, we're really not working on it yet. And I mean, just opening it up. I mean, if people thought the GDPR is long to read, and I went through it once, but again, like, a lot of that is very soft and flexible law, and it's not where we have expertise right now. So we're not working on it. And we more right now look at personal data within the AI systems. And the AI basically says once it's personal data, the GDPR controls it, not us. So we default back to the GDPR anyways when it comes to personal data. And there we have our first cases in that sense that, what is the legal basis for training data? What I find really interesting is the accuracy principle, which deliberately was written for, at the time of the negotiations of the GDPR, big data with correlations and algorithms that somehow do weird things. I think that was the kind of back then way of describing AI systems.
Related to this, thoughts on the Hamburg DPA's opinion on
I don't know
the
what
fact-
they drank or took, or I don't know.
So yeah, let me know what you think.
To be honest, I think I'm very worried about the DPA is getting into this AI stuff too quickly, in the sense that I read that paper and it just has a jump in logic where there's just a gap in between. And that is basically where you say once it's tokenized, it cannot possibly be personal data anymore. And I was like, guys, have you ever thought about how any data is stored? It's never stored in one string. Like usually if you know how an SSD is working, it's chopped up into 1,000 little pieces,
Right.
stored somewhere and put back together whenever you pull that picture or I don't know, data field. And basically by saying because we tokenize it, it cannot possibly personal data anymore. It's like, have you ever looked at
Wait a
any
minute.
of this? Like this picture went into the system and exactly the same picture comes out of the system if prompted that way.
Right.
We know that it's in there. And there you see that there's a lot of political wishes to the DPAs of like not doing it properly, not enforcing stuff. And kind of making it possible for an industry. And a lot of that is pushed by the industry, that they want this kind of legal certainty, which is not going to be legal certainty in the long run. Because, I mean, once it hits the courts, so once it hits the Court of Justice or something, they're going to be like, wait a second, like, you put all the stuff in and exactly the same shit comes out of the back, and that's not personal data.
It was a discussion paper, though.
Yeah,
so
but like,
think-
I mean, still, if you put out a discussion paper as a DPA, you send a
Right.
message, and a lot of people now
Exactly.
start to rely on it to be like, oh, it's the Hamburg DPA and its discussion paper says.
that's exactly right.
And that's a
Yeah.
bit of a problem that I generally see with this pushing, like some of these. The other one that always gets me excited, like laughing, is like the risk-based approach, or like these legal or allegedly legal, because they're just PR bullshit, but allegedly legal theories that basically are meant to kind of not really comply with the law. And my favorite now, exactly around AI, is where now I think Apple came out. Apple actually around the store, but Meta around AI to say, oh, now there's legal uncertainty because. First, you create a bullshit theory why you shouldn't comply with the law, and then if that's not accepted by the EDPB or the courts, then you complain about legal uncertainty. It's like you just created that uncertainty first, and now you complain that it doesn't go ahead. And that's quite interesting because it's still in our bubble very accepted, or you're not. You're meant to kind of take it seriously. And to be honest, we're in the lucky position of 20 lawyers that all have worked usually in the business side first and decided I'm done with this to just laugh about it anymore. But in a lot of the rest of our conferences, you kind of have to still discuss that. And my favorite is usually the risk-based approach, where guys, there was I think 3 or 4 articles of the GDPR that are risk-based, like I don't know, security. But you can't say this is a principle of the GDPR, so I don't know, consent is now risk-based. It's just like, this is just not how anything works. But interestingly, clients want to hear that, companies want to hear that, and then it just gets copy-pasted.
I will tell you, most US companies are operationalizing a risk-based approach to their
and I mean, there's a
privacy.
different risk-based approach, which I accept that there is a risk in getting a fine. But that's a different risk-based approach than saying the law doesn't apply to me.
Right. Right. I want to switch gears a little bit, Max, and talk about the anticipated Schrems 3. So, I know you dislike these things being called Schrems 1 or Schrems 2, but
I gave up.
I know. I think in a podcast you said you've kind of accepted the fact that we're referring to these kind of decisions.
I tried to
as
do
that.
safe harbor decision and privacy shield decision, but it just didn't happen.
So with the data privacy framework, what's the end goal? Like, what I know there's issues with the new framework, and basically it's a copycat, and not really hitting on the points that NOIB has identified in terms of FISA.
But to be honest, the Court of Justice has identified, like,
Right.
we didn't write that judgment.
Exactly. All relevant points, though. But where are we going with this? Are we just in this perpetual cycle of?
I'm now overly Austrian, but bear with me for a second. We had this right-wing extremist politician. Like, we had all the right-wing crazy populism ever since the 90s. So we know all the problems. We don't know the solutions, though. You can look at Austria for everything that doesn't work for that. But we had that guy, and basically it was about bilingual street signs in a section that is having a minority, a language minority.
Okay.
And our Supreme Court told him this street sign has to be bilingual. And what did that politician do? He took the street sign and just concreted it back in 5 meters down the road and said, now it's a new street sign. The judgment does not apply. Obviously, that didn't go anywhere, but that's literally what the European Commission is now doing with data transfer agreements.
Just kicking the can down the road.
Basically says, oh, if we just pass it with a new headline, we're going to argue it's a new thing. Now, to be fair, the people at the commission that have to, work on that, I think largely know that that's bullshit. But it was a political decision from the very high up, which is Ursula von der Leyen, the kind of president of the European Commission, so kind of our European president or head of the executive, together with Biden. And it was interesting because for 1.5 years, the experts couldn't find a solution. And now these two people had an afternoon coffee and suddenly all the solutions were there, which I guess is the reason they're private presidents and we're not. But it was a purely political decision to have another deal. And it works in that sense that passing it could actually take a couple of months or weeks. In reality, it took much longer. But overturning it in the European system takes a couple of years because only the Court of Justice can declare something unconstitutional. We call it a violation of the charter.
Right.
But in the US, any local court could also declare something unconstitutional. We can only do that at the Court of Justice. So you need to go through a national court, get a reference, have the whole process. It takes at least 1.5 years to be at the Court of Justice and so on. So what they're doing is basically just passing the new deal faster than the Court of Justice can annul it again. And I think what I always try to highlight, other than all the substantive issues that we have, and I mean, if we want to go into that for a second, in the commercial data usage, it's literally the same deal ever since 2000. And we have, for example, opt-out instead of opt-in. We have data must be relevant, not necessary. So there's all these things where we would never accept a law for any other jurisdiction than the US like that. Like we would never say, okay, it's fine if, I don't know, Israel would have that. On the government surveillance side, it's really interesting because there is no court again. We basically have a pumped up ombudsperson, which is the one we had before. And that's Article 47. And just to put it in a larger context, the Court of Justice has just told Hungary and Poland that their appointment of judges is not good enough and therefore a violation of Article 47, this exact same article. And now they say a tribunal that is not really a court, that is secret and all of that stuff, that's good enough under the same Article 47. So it's going to be, I mean, the Court of Justice would have to get totally, schizophrenic to say this is fine for the US, but then actually for the other cases under 47, it's not fine. Same thing is true for government surveillance on the material side, where, I mean, the big change that we have, I mean, they took the new executive order, which is the old PPD 28 that Obama has passed as an executive order. They basically shredded that into little pieces and reassembled the pieces in a different order. But you see the same elements just totally all over the place.
I saw the comparison on Noib, right?
Yeah, so it's like, on the commercial side, it's super easy because you can just literally see the 2-3 words that they have changed. Yeah. On the government surveillance side, the whole text is new, but all shredded into pieces and put back together. The one big thing that is different there is that they now say that there is this proportionality principle, which we have under the charter, implemented in the executive order. So it's true that the word proportionate is there, but at the same time, the US maintains that this surveillance that the Court of Justice found to be disproportionate or actually a violation of the essence of fundamental rights, which is a bit of a different thing, they find that to be proportionate under US law. So the weird thing is they agreed on the word proportionate, but then decided that it will have a different meaning in the US.
Right.
So great, you guys, you agreed on the word, but not on the meaning of the word, which is like, hey, we agree that, I don't know, this is white, but I just feel that black is white. So therefore, we agree on the word, but not on the meaning. And that's going to be so laughable. And I think one dynamic that the privacy community also doesn't have in there is the Court of Justice has a larger body of case law. It has said that, I don't know, data retention in Europe violates Article 8. We have all these things where they have set, they have put a red line 10 times, and this one is still so far outside that even with slight improvements, without being absolutely crazy in its case law, they cannot move it. And the last bit that I think people don't have on the radar enough is since the Lisbon Treaty, so 2009, the Court of Justice became a constitutional court, kind of a Supreme Court of the European Union. Before that, it was more of a commercial court, you could say, or like an international court, so to say. And in both of the litigation, or both of the hearings we had, there was a big part of the judges grilling the commission, saying, we are now a constitutional court. You as the commission have to explain to us what you're doing is constitutional. And the commission was basically saying, oh, it's diplomacy and international and policy and blah, blah, blah. And the judges were like, screw you. This is not what we are talking about here. If your policy work or your political things are just going beyond the red lines of our constitutional system, it's our job to stop you. And that was interesting because you saw these kind of different worldviews collide almost in these cases. So I think a lot of these cases are about the authority of the court itself. And now, if you try to establish your authority as a judge, and the delinquent comes back with the same problem the third time around, how likely are you going to be, the third time, oh, now it's all fine. So I think this dynamic is also an element that plays into these cases. So long story short, you ask when it comes, it's actually 90% done. I'm just too bored to do it because we all know what the answer is. It's the most boring thing we have on the table.
Yeah.
And here we go doing a third round so that we have the third version of a text. I had one commissioner asking me in one of these meetings after explaining all the problems. So kind of, yes, I accept all the problems, but do you have a suggestion for the next name? I was like, what did we just talk about right now? So the big problem that you get in DC is not that they're not efficient or that they have a problem about being efficient, but that there is no way you get anything passed in US Congress anymore. Right. So some people also make this comparison that basically pay or pay should be as much as the service costs or the revenue from everything.